Hey y'all, I hope you're well. Welcome to another episode of Healthcare Boulevard. This is a podcast where we shine more light on healthcare, and our goal here is to provide more options to people looking to choose healthcare as a career path, regardless of their background. My name is Sena Kakpomo, and I am your host and creator here. I thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your support. Remember, you can tune in wherever you get your podcast. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Good morning, Healthcare Boulevard. It's been a while, but I am back here with you guys. I have not forgotten or abandoned Healthcare Boulevard. It's just been a lot happening, but I'm here today for another interview with Sarah, who is a pharmacist, and I'm excited to get her on into your ears and learn a little bit from her experience and her professional journey, how she got here and how she likes, doing what she's doing. So Sarah, how you doing? Good morning.
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. And I just love Healthcare Boulevard and how you really do guide people through so many different professions that are potentially available and help people make the right choice for them. So glad to be here today to be representing pharmacy.
Of course. So now I just asked you, but I want to ask you again. You are in Texas, is that correct?
I'm over in Houston, Texas, right by the Texas Medical Center. And, to me, where a lot of exciting advancements in healthcare are happening.
How do you like being a pharmacist? This is like a weird question, but how it's just so general.
For me, I love it. I think, it's such a unique kind of training and knowledge to have really such a detailed understanding of medications and how they work. And with medications being so important in almost any disease state that you have, it's almost always, a medication will be needed at some point to treat it or at some point in your life. So it really is kind of a mainstay of healthcare, if you will.
Thank you. And how did you get into pharmacy? What's your professional journey, especially as it relates to pharmacy? How did it start and when?
Yeah, so when I went to college, I didn't know what I was going to do. I started as a business major, and then I switched to the College of Liberal Arts, and I was in psychology. And then I kind of found my home in the College of Natural Sciences when I became a biology major.
Okay.
But what do you do with a biology degree? So it turned out one of my parents' really good friends was a pharmacist, and she loved being a pharmacist. She told me about it. She worked in a hospital. And I think pharmacy is for me. And it was just really, I remember the conversation when I talked to her. And after that, I switched to pre-pharmacy and I finished my biology degree and I applied for pharmacy school. So it was, really as simple as that.
Did you get to see her at work, shadow her? What was, besides her telling you what she does, what was your exposure to pharmacy before you decide to go into pharmacy school?
Prior to that, absolutely nothing. I don't even remember as a child going to the pharmacy with my parents or anything like that. I'm sure we did, but it was just not something that stuck out to me. Right. It wasn't until I, switched over to that kind of degree that I started volunteering at the hospital pharmacy. And that was kind of the first time I was inside a pharmacy working. And that was in Austin. Went to school at University of Texas. So
okay. How was volunteering in the pharmacy? Like what were you allowed to do and how did you intake all that information?
Every time I show up, they have a box of medications and they say, we saved all the putbacks for you. So I have to go find where they go on the shelf and put all the meds back. And it would take, it'd be like a 4-hour shift that I'd sign up for, and I'd spend the whole 4 hours on that huge box of meds that they save up. They're like, oh good, we have a volunteer coming.
That's exciting. One of my biggest thing when I started, getting into medicine and having to learn about medication was the names. Like there were some names I'm just, I can't even pronounce that. How was that for you, just getting bombarded with so many different medication names?
Well, it's great when you're in pharmacy school. The first semester, you have a class called medical terminology. So you learn all of the Latin roots and what they mean. And honestly, it just takes a lot of practice. If you practice saying enough, you get kind of used to the way that it sounds. And for anyone that doesn't use that all the time, it's very foreign, and it's really complicated to say some of those generic names. The brand names are usually easier to pronounce.
Right, which is why there exists, right? It's like, oh my goodness. But so tell us where you are right now. What's your professional position now as a pharmacist?
So right now, I'm the director of clinical affairs at the American Society of Pharmacovigilance, and that's a nonprofit organization that I co-founded in 2018. Our entire mission is to address the high rate of adverse drug events in the U.S. So that includes medication errors, adverse drug reactions, or what most people call side effects from medications. And it's, right now in the role that I've kind of developed for myself, I lead the society's clinical research and educational initiative. So basically everything we do at ASP, I have a hand in. I also co-led the formation of 2 multidisciplinary stakeholder groups focused on patient access to molecular diagnostics, and another one that's related to setting industry standards and best practices for pharmacogenetics testing. So that's something that can be used to understand how a patient will process a medication before they take that medication. And, we're also gearing up to launch our educational series coming up next month, or later this month, actually, called Partners in Precision Medicine. And we're doing this kind of 12-week series to discuss challenges and opportunities related to pharmacogenomics for different kind of stakeholder perspectives.
What led you to starting this company or nonprofit?
So, it's kind of an interesting journey. My first job out of pharmacy school was running an independent compounding pharmacy in North Houston, where we made non-sterile products like prescription creams and capsules. From there, I went over to a comprehensive cancer center, and I worked in the ambulatory transfusion unit, and we did all the sterile IV infusions, including investigational chemotherapy for patients on study protocols. So while I was in that role, I also worked as a research consultant on a few different projects, one of which was to develop an algorithm that could help identify patients that would most benefit from certain types of genetics testing. And we just, as we were doing that project, we kept running up against these statistics about adverse drug events, which is actually the 4th leading cause of death in the US. And, more people die from taking a medication that wasn't right for them than, people who die from a car accident or from HIV. So, it's a big problem, and it's one that I just felt like I could help solve. So a group of us started ASP, and really just to create a platform for healthcare professionals to come together and kind of address this broad problem that affects all of us.
Drug adverse reaction is so many. It's funny because the more I learned about medicine, I was just very surprised at the side effects of not just medications in general, but over the counter, right? Because a lot of times the general population thinks of over the counter medicine is very safe. There is no side effect, even to this day, sometimes when I tell folks like, taking too many Advil may not be the best for you for a long term. And they're like, what's wrong with it? It's over the counter. Like, what could go wrong?
Yeah. It's so true. And I think, even when a patient goes to see their doctor and they say, what medications are you taking? They won't even mention any over-the-counter meds, because not everyone even really realizes those are actually also medications too. And, the ibuprofen and, the Advil, that type of thing, that's one thing. But then you also have the herbal supplements, and then those can affect other medications you can take too, and nobody even thinks twice about those. So that's, I think, part of the awareness as well, is just know your meds. And just because something's quote unquote all natural doesn't mean it doesn't interact with your body. So
no, I mean, a lot of the other pills are derived from, some type of plant or some type of, so it doesn't mean that, it's
exactly right.
not gonna over interact with other things. So that's exciting. What's your favorite part about being a pharmacist, especially in the realm that you are, because you're not like in dispensing medication like majority of pharmacists. So what's your favorite part about that?
So for me, my favorite part is still the patient engagement piece. I have a unique role in that we're focused on, specifically on medication safety. So I've met a lot of people who have had a journey with an adverse drug event. Some people received a drug they should never have been prescribed, and it literally debilitated them. Other people have lost a loved one who had an adverse event that could have been prevented. So, I think the most inspiring thing for me is when I meet people that have experienced unthinkable tragedy, yet go to extraordinary measures to prevent others from going through what they went through. So a big part of my role is creating a platform for these stories to be heard and putting a focus on issues that really just don't get enough attention. So like, for example, this year we launched our Fourth Cause campaign to encourage patients to share their story and encourage healthcare professionals and organizations to talk about how they champion medication safety. And it's a year-round campaign. Anyone can participate by using the hashtag Fourth Cause on social media. And we have an official toolkit that people can download at www.fourthcause.org. But, I think every pharmacist has an opportunity to give patients a voice by helping them understand what they need to know to make decisions about their health and facilitate conversations with their physician so they can, and there could be collaboration in making sure that patient gets the best care possible and care that is defined by that patient's goals, for their own treatment as well.
And what are some of your not so favorite part or challenges as it relates to, the field of pharmacy?
So I think really for me, the biggest challenge is, at least in my role, is starting new initiatives. Because, if you're starting something new, there's a long time and a long process that you have to go to secure buy-in from other people that need to be involved in the initiative and really, tailor the project and show them that this is something that's going to be helpful to them in their role, and with all the different things we could do that, it's worth their time. So in regards to my role, that's probably the biggest challenge. I think throughout the field of pharmacy, one of the biggest challenges is how do we expand and create new roles for pharmacists that better utilize their skill set. So a lot of the projects we do, I think, are helping to push the field forward in terms of new roles in pharmacogenomics and some of these other areas. But we also need more in terms of our educational system as well, and helping to kind of change how we train our pharmacists to do more than just kind of make sure the right pill's in the bottle, and those types of operational things that pharmacists tend to spend more and more of their time doing, as opposed to what we're intended to do and engaging with patients and making sure everything is as it should be.
Right. And what settings were you working in before this position that you created for yourself? Well, clinical settings were you on?
Yeah, so I worked in community setting, and I worked in a hospital setting, and the hospital setting was an oncology hospital, so a lot of really specific related to chemotherapies and that type of thing, and in particular infusions.
Okay. And you spent some time at the NIH. What was your role there?
And yeah, so I'm on a working group inside the National Human Genomic Research Institute at NIH, and it's one called Inter-Society Coordinating Committee. So for practitioner education in genomics. So basically, everyone who's on that working group is representing a professional society that includes genomics in some way and as part of their organization's offerings and offer some sort of genomics education. So I am on the PGX working group. So we're developing practitioner education for pharmacogenomics. And right now we're working on a set of modules for family practitioners, so family medicine physicians, and just kind of helping people understand what is pharmacogenomics, what medications could benefit from understanding the genetics of the patient before giving it to them, and basically how to implement it and bring it to the point of care.
Okay. And you have a couple titles that for myself I would like to get more information about that. And one of those was ambulatory treatment center pharmacist. What was that setting? What were you doing there?
So in a hospital setting for pharmacists, there's usually inpatient and outpatient. Mm-hmm. But then there's also, we had at our facility an ambulatory treatment center, which is still considered outpatient because the patient's not admitted. Mm-hmm. They're coming, they're getting their infusion, and then they leave after their infusion. Unless something happens, they have to get admitted. But in the ATC, we basically help coordinate doses. So if they are coming for their treatment, we help make sure they get their medication in a timely fashion. And it's a little bit different than in the traditional outpatient setting, where it's mostly oral pills, since we're doing all the sterile kind of compounding, mm-hmm. In addition to coordinating the dose and all of that. So.
Okay. And for your education, did you go to any residency program after graduation?
Yeah, it's funny because when I was in pharmacy school, I had planned on doing a residency. It was something that I really thought that I would end up doing. And by the time I got to the end of my fourth year, I just felt like I needed a break. And, residencies are really intense. Mm-hmm. And it's, first year you could do a PGY1, and it's kind of a general residency. And then if you want to specialize, it's another year in whatever that specialty is. So I decided not to apply for the MATCH program, but I did go on a few years later to become a board certified pharmacotherapy specialist. And I do think that training and postgraduate training and education is really important. So there's a lot of different ways that pharmacists can specialize. And it's just, for me, I ended up not doing a residency.
Okay. And can you tell us more about the specialization that you did and what that revolves around?
Yeah, so there's different board certifications you can get as a pharmacist. Mm-hmm. Critical care, they have new ones coming out. I saw one even for what I was doing as an IV room pharmacist, where we were compounding medications. There's now a board certification for that. There's and the pharmacotherapy, it's more general, so across all the different medication classes. And it's just something that some people consider it, I wouldn't say it's an equivalent for residency training, but as kind of another thing that you can do in mm-hmm. addition to, or to help if you didn't go through the residency training.
And is that a training separate that you're doing for like a year or what have you, or is it just something wherein you study and take the board and you get?
Yeah, it's a test, so they have all the preparation materials that you can purchase, and you study for that. And it's a really difficult test. And the board certification for pharmacotherapy, I think, is probably not as hard as some of the other ones. Like I've heard the oncology one is really tricky, even for oncology pharmacists that have gone through the residency training. So it just depends. But it's a test you take, and then you get the certification for 7 years. And then once you get the board certification, you can either take the test again when at the end of the 7 years when it expires, or you can do the continuing education and just make sure you get the right number of credits, and they'll automatically renew it at the 7 years if you've kept up with all of the requirements.
I see. And this is a question I try to ask everybody that I interview, and that is, what is your work-life balance in terms of as a pharmacist? And you can even sort of get into what it is now compared to what it was when you were right out of school and so forth.
Sure. Yeah. So it's like night and day, because when I was working in a hospital, I started on the evening shift. So as all new pharmacists must go through their, pay their dues, as you will. So it was a 12:30 to 9 p.m. shift, which actually isn't that bad. I had some friends from pharmacy school on the inpatient side, and they were working, I think it was like 3 p.m. until 11 p.m. Every night, and they had that shift for years. And so I was 12:39, and then as the years kind of went on, I got opportunities to transfer to other areas. And so by the time I left after 5 years, I had been moved up a couple of times to 10:30 to 6 p.m. shift. And really there was a lot to do every day. We had and we shift. When I started, we had pharmacist order entry, and then we shift over to Epic, which is a different electronic health record, and we switched to physician order entry. So then pharmacy would be verifying that order, make sure the doses were calculated correctly, and some of the chemo doses have really complicated calculations. Mm-hmm. So and just checking all the labs, making sure the patient's eligible for treatment. And then we also had, with sterile IV compounding, there's an additional kind of layer challenge in that there's a stability of the vials and the drugs inside the vial, and how long are the preparations stable for. So you really have to be coordinated, and when the patient arrives, when you start making it, we would prepare doses which were only good for an hour, which seems like a long time, an hour, but if the infusion's 30 minutes, you really have to make sure like that comes out, that goes to the patient, and they get it before it expires. And same thing with, we had a lot of investigational medications that we were using. Some of them had really complicated preparations. Mm-hmm. So these are the type of like logistical challenges that we dealt with every day. And of course, it's no matter where you are, it's always a volumes game. So how many patients we could treat, and same in a retail setting, I feel like it's how many vials can we get out the door. Mm-hmm. And I think in terms of for pharmacists, we need to have more time to be able to engage with patients, but it always comes down to, even clinical pharmacists, it's still, how many patients can we see? And right. People are having to write notes really quickly in the chart and all of that. So that was kind of my day-to-day at Anderson. And it was a great job. I learned a lot, but I got to kind of a point where I just felt like I had learned everything that I could in that role after 5 years, and it was time for something new. So in terms of my day-to-day now, I would say it changes every day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm doing research. I'll put together presentations for different conferences. We have it's more like meetings, I would say. So meet to work on different projects so I have, I think an opportunity to work with people I would never have gotten the chance to work with, because there's different organizations and different types of healthcare professionals that we work with on a lot of these different projects. So I think in the past I may be helping one patient or however many patients we had that day, but I feel like in this role, the things we're doing have kind of broader implications and could help patients as the broader community on a grander scale. So I definitely really love what I do. There's a lot of flexibility. So, I don't have to worry about submitting for time off or anything like that.
Right. And now, as far as what you do now with ASP, what do you What other healthcare professionals do you interact with?
Yeah, so I would say I work with a lot of pharmacists, physicians, people that work on health policy, people that run other organizations, administrative health administrators. I'm trying to think of a healthcare professional I haven't worked with over the past 3 years, because it really is, with medication safety, it really is something that everyone has a role in. It, obviously, pharmacists are play a big part in that, but everyone's affected by that issue and has a role in helping to prevent issues with medications.
And for clearly you're in a leadership position, and everybody has a different view of this. Is what are some leadership positions that are available for pharmacists, just in general?
Yeah, so pharmacists, I think, have a lot of opportunities. First, there's always, professional organizations that are specifically for pharmacists, and those vary, by practice settings. So you have the hospital pharmacist organization, the community pharmacy organization, managed care, anything real, any specialty for pharmacy, there's probably a group that's doing that. And if that's your area or something that you're really interested in, you can always join those organizations and participate in committee work. There's so many different health related initiatives. So even if it's not specifically a pharmacy organization, it might be something that you're really passionate about and that they need a pharmacist perspective on that committee. So I never thought I'd be on a committee inside NIH, but there's, a ton of things they're doing. It's not just, within NHGRI, but there's the Institute on Aging, all these different, I think they have 11 different institutes. So if people are interested in leadership opportunities, there's so many organizations, even at ASP. If anyone's listening now and they think, wow, I'm really interested in medication safety, drop us a line. We have a ton of projects, and we have a pathway for everyone to participate. So, and I think that's really important too, because that's kind of how you can help get experience that you wouldn't normally have as, a retail pharmacist or a hospital pharmacist. You will get to do other things that you wouldn't get to do inside whatever your day-to-day is.
That's fair. And what would you say to somebody wanting to get into pharmacy right now, in terms of how to better know how they can help advance the field?
Yeah, I'd say my biggest advice is get out there. If you're thinking about applying for pharmacy school, I'm sure that your GPA or your PCAT score is front of mind, but there's only so much you can do to distinguish yourself from other applicants if that's the only thing you're focused on. Experience is so important. Go volunteer at a pharmacy, sign up for a health fair, work on an educational or awareness project. You could do a research project. So, and if nothing's available, create your own. I mean, now's the time. We have all of these opportunities to connect with other people and, start your own initiative. I think that would stand out to me if I was reviewing applications. So, it's just, there's a lot of problems in healthcare and we need your help to solve them. So prepare yourself. And this is an exciting time for pharmacy. So that's my advice.
I like it. What are your future aspirations for ASP right now? What is your ultimate goal, essentially?
Yeah, I think right now it took us a couple of years to develop our voice as an organization. And now projects that we've started over the past couple of years are really getting traction. So we'd like to see those projects come to fruition, especially projects related to setting best practices and industry standards where they don't already exist. And a lot of those are related to precision medicine and pharmacogenetics. And then just continuing to raise awareness. So with Fourth Cause, we launched that on National Adverse Drug Event Day, Awareness Day earlier this year. So we want to continue that momentum and continue to encourage people to share their story, because this is a health issue that's just not really getting the attention it should be. So we need to be putting it in front of, the court of public opinion, if you will, and our policymakers and that type of thing, because there's so much we can do to, optimize our processes and, make getting the patient the right medication a priority. So that's really our goals, is to continue to push the work forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, if you don't have anything else to add, I think that's most of the questions I have for you. And I will get, the links and search and share with our listeners, so that if they want to get involved and join you, or get some advice from you in terms of as a professional pharmacist who's in the realm that you are, because you are doing something that's different, set apart from what the average route of a pharmacist, at least the way it's laid out, you know what I mean? So I think it would be great for them to be able to, if they're so choose and if they're on that path, be able to get some advice and be inspired by your journey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have plenty of projects and we love getting people involved. That's one of the perks of the job here. So whatever I can do to help.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Stay safe out there.
Thank you. You
Bye.
too. Bye. All right. That's all I have for you today. Thank you again for joining me. I appreciate you. Please subscribe, follow, like, comment, and share. And stay blessed. Bye.